Hello, and welcome back to my ongoing coverage of the OceanGate Titan submersible tragedy. So, I watched a new OceanGate/Titan documentary last night. As I spoke about in my last video, I am awaiting the upcoming Netflix documentary that will be released in June, but until a very last minute, had no idea at all about the one I watched last night, made by the BBC, which is called Implosion, the Titanic sub-disaster, and is available to watch online on BBC iPlayer. So, if you are able to access that, please feel free to return to this video later after watching it, as I will be speaking about some of its highlights, both as part of my ongoing coverage, and also for those who are not able to view the programme, perhaps because of geographical restrictions, for example. Seeing that another Titan documentary had been released got me thinking that this and also the Netflix documentary have obviously been released around this time to coincide with the 2-year anniversary of the tragedy. And so with that in mind, would there really be any new or significant information in them, especially for anyone who has actually followed the OceanGate story? I wasn't expecting a whole lot, if I'm honest. Maybe just a general overview of what has transpired since the tragedy, in terms of the debris being recovered and the fact that an investigation had been launched, things of that nature, with footage most of us have probably seen before, multiple times. I was, however, surprised last night, as the documentary offered a lot more than I anticipated, so I just wanted to make this video and highlight some of the important moments it contained. So first, I want to speak about Josh Gates, who approached OceanGate during 2020 to document Titan for a show on the Discovery Channel. He spent time at OceanGate's facility and even took a dive with Stockton Rush, and that whole process has brought more video footage to light that I myself at least have not seen before, and also actual audio shared by Stockton Rush himself of a recording of the noise that first Titan hull was making, and his, Stockton's, own thoughts on it, which I found quite chilling. We will get onto that audio clip shortly, but first we hear about Josh Gates' experience of being in the sub and the problems that occurred during his dive.
The dive was interesting in that nothing really worked right.
Well, I'm having trouble with our port horizontal thruster.
The sub didn't really do anything it was asked to do. Then there was an issue with the software. The system crashed at one point.
Hello? You copy? Yeah, but I don't like when thrusters go up. We may just go back to the platform rather than go to the bottom.
Okay.
We're pretty much here.
We had to scrub the dive and bring it back to the surface.
So then we get on to Mr. Gates asking Stockton Rush about noises the sub might make, and just matter-of-factly, Mr. Rush says, "Hey, I'll play you a clip of what carbon fibre collapsing around you sounds like," and proceeds to play an audio recording taken from an earlier dive with Titan's first hull. And though Mr. Rush's disregard for safety has been well documented, this part still left me a little speechless.
How noisy is it when it goes down? Is it pretty quiet?
Oh, it'll be quiet. There's usually a bang somewhere. Most subs have a bang of some type. When I was in the sub before, and it was, I'll play you what it sounded like when the carbon fiber is collapsing around you and you don't have much time left. This is what it sounds like.
And what, you just were ascending at that point? Like...
No, I was going down. I kept going down. Because, why not? I don't know if it'll play on the speaker, but... Those click sounds, that wasn't a mouse clicking. And you could feel it. I was in the dome. I could feel these things popping. The second dive, I put earplugs in.
Right.
And it worked much better.
I just ignored it, right?
Yeah.
This is one section of the documentary I really think is valuable, and I never for a second thought I would ever get to hear the actual popping sounds from that first hull, as well as an off-the-cuff remark about it from Stockton Rush, in one of his lesser rehearsed moments. Mr. Gates also spoke about that, how Mr. Rush's words mirrored that of a car salesman, seeming very rehearsed, and how the whole thing made his, Mr. Gates's, spider senses tingle. That the whole thing just felt off.
So we've had 52 dives in the sub to date.
Test dives?
Test dives. We spent a year and a half in the Bahamas testing the sub. But we've done a massive upgrade of the software systems and some of the external components, and we're testing. And so those things you test.
And I was thinking, when did they go back and test this new sub in the Bahamas? And I couldn't quite make the dates line up in my head.
What Stockton hadn't told Josh was that this Titan, with its replaced hull, had only been tested so far on 3 shallow dives.
I suddenly realized, what would it mean if I made this kind of promotional documentary about Stockton and about OceanGate that maybe inspired other people to go and take a ride in this sub? And then something happened to it. And so I made the really difficult decision to call up the president of the network and to fall on my sword and say, I know that this is something that was a big deal for you to sign off on, and I appreciate the opportunity, but we shouldn't do this. This is a mistake. Something bad is going to happen here.
As I expected, this documentary covered the US Coast Guard's investigation and snippets of the testimonies given there. The documentary also includes interviews with some of those who testified, including Carl Stanley, Antonella Wilby, Fred Hagen, and Tim Catterson. We also get to see more and hear more from the Coast Guard themselves too, as the BBC had been granted access to behind the scenes of their investigation, which was interesting to see, and again included some information that was new to me, including some genuine thoughts from the Coast Guard about Stockton Rush and his operation.
He knew the risks he was taking with that carbon fiber hull and with the Titan, but he didn't tell anybody else about those risks because he had to make the money.
There were so many opportunities for Stockton to stop this operation from happening, and he always chose to continue the operation instead of thinking about it from a safety perspective.
So really what we have here is not an accident. It's a potential crime.
They did not register it.
Why would they not register it?
One reason to not register is to make sure that no one from a regulatory standpoint is monitoring your operations. You know, by design, to operate in a manner that you stay off the radar.
Also included were images of the Titan debris that was recovered and something that was found inside.
As we're pulling each item out, we have to individually separate it, and we placed it out on 2 tarps. So we're sifting through, and we realized what it was, the clothing material. It was the portion of Mr. Rush's suit, the piece of his sleeve that had survived. No, not the whole suit, just that. And inside of the sleeve of it was ink pen, business cards, and stickers for the Titanic.
Just like what the upcoming Netflix documentary is shaping up to be, this one was also focused almost completely on Stockton Rush, which is something I was glad about, given his sway at the company. There were times when some details regarding the investigation or just facts in general were not entirely covered correctly, or further details that would have given more context were omitted, but this did make way for more recent material, such as that audio recording and people actually being able to speak their minds now that the testimonies are completed. Going back to 2019, when Carl Stanley took his dive in Titan and heard those noises for himself that continued when at depth and also when ascending, also present that day was Petros Matthew-Dakis, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name, who describes what Stockton Rush said to him before he dove.
I was aware that this was extremely risky, and Stockton was very clear. He said, do you have a wife? And I said, no. Do you have kids? And I said, nope. He said, okay, you're in. The carbon fiber made a noise in that hull. It was extremely loud. It was like a gunshot. Any noise would have been loud, but that was loud.
The cracking sounds were continuing, so at some point, collectively, we came to a decision of, well, that's good enough, let's call it a day. I'm sure we were within a few percentage points of implosion.
There are quite a few moments like this, of people sharing their own interactions and opinions of Stockton Rush. The documentary also covers the incident where Titan's front dome fell off, where Fred Hagen, who was due to dive, speaks about the experience, including how that incident was attempted to be hushed up by OceanGate. Then the incident on Dive 80, where the loud bang was heard, which Antonella Wilby speaks about, of her own experiences trying to raise concerns. This documentary made my already high level of respect grow for Miss Wilby, as it states she herself volunteered to testify at the public hearing, and even now she is brought to tears, wondering if she could have done more to stop the tragedy. And it is a great shame that someone else's recklessness should make her feel that way. We hear too from Christine Dawood, wife of Shahzada and mother of Suleiman, who both lost their lives. And it is very touching to hear her thoughts, including of course how much she is missing her family, but also her sense of being unable to hold anyone accountable, as, she states, the culprit also lost his life that day. The documentary includes, as I said, lots of footage that is new, at least to me, so if you are able to watch it in full, I highly recommend it, and apologies I can't share too much of it in this video, as I don't want the wrath of the BBC on me. A lot of what was said, at least in the cases of Antonella Wilby, Carl Stanley, Fred Hagen and Tim Catterson, has been covered in their individual testimonies, so if you haven't already, they are also available to view on my channel. Please let me know if you saw this documentary too, and what you thought, and I will of course make another video that covers the Netflix documentary once that one is released. But before then, there will be more testimony videos coming, so stay tuned for those too. We are making our way through them, and soon we'll be coming towards their climax, but I also still have documentation videos to make, my own documentary that I'm currently working on, and then of course, later in the year, will be the Coast Guard's final published report on the incident. In this documentary, as you have hopefully heard, if I do manage to get that clip included, that this could be treated as a crime, and if so, it will be interesting to see what happens and what fault is found outside of Stockton Rush. But that is for the future of course, but just letting you know that there is still plenty to come. As ever, thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.
Don't miss the opportunity to be part of history. OceanGate Expeditions offers you the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be a specially trained crew member safely diving to the Titanic wreckage site.
You may have seen in the write-up of this that I wanted to be an astronaut. That's why I got an engineering degree. I watched Star Trek, Star Wars, and I wasn't going to get to Jupiter or Mars, but I did realize that all the cool stuff that I thought was out there is actually underwater. It's been a long process to ensure that Titan can go to the Titanic repeatedly and safely.
He was not going to be swayed from using carbon fiber.
We've refined the process.
Stockton and OceanGate needed to maintain their company vision of taking people in a carbon fiber innovative submersible for the trip of a lifetime.
I can't wait to get out to the Titanic. The Titanic is one of the most amazing brands in the world. It became a must-do dive. And so from a business perspective, it was very appealing.
I understand the draw to go down and see the underwater world, the Titanic firsthand. But how do you keep the person safe who doesn't understand submersible operations, who just knows they want to go see something unique? from taking the ultimate risk like that, especially in a kind of a commercial arrangement. They're paying passengers. That is something the Coast Guard has to look at.
When we got to the surface, Scott was piloting. He heard a really loud bang, not a soothing sound.
No.
But on the surface, and as Tim and PH will attest, almost every deep diving sub makes a noise at some point.
When they heard this loud bang, there should have been all stop, do not continue, investigate further to make sure that that carbon fiber hull was still safe for people to operate in.
The hull itself, you're not going to hurt the hull. From a standpoint of passenger safety, you're going to be alive because the hull, nothing is breaching the hull. It's the safest spot on the entire planet, but the stuff around it can get smashed and mangled, and then that can delay launches and dives and all kinds of stuff. The unique thing that we're doing here, and we're in a unique spot, we're a site where so many people pass away. There are a lot of parallels. That was a ship that was one of the finest ships of its day, and I think we have a sub that's one of the finest subs. We want to make sure we do things safely and have a good outcome, and are able to take people down to the wreck for many years to come.
Yeah. Should be about 500 meters, 30. What was that like?